Donovan Clinton.
I'm Donovan Clinton.
And you're watching Dizzy's Discussions.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Dizzy, and after 3 long years, I'm back with another episode of Dizzy's Discussions. As you can see in the intro there, a lot has happened in those 3 years. I just finished up my second year of school and football at Rocky Mountain College out in Billings, Montana. And while I was out there getting ready to come home, I thought, I got to get back to this. I got to get back to doing this thing that I enjoy, interviewing people, getting to know people more, getting in front of the camera and getting used to talking to people. And I got home and I reached out to someone very special to me. And if you're a student athlete at any level, he should be very special to you as well. He is Ramogi Huma. He was a graduate of UCLA back in 1999, where he quickly realized the injustice going on between NCAA and the student athletes at the college level. He is the president of the NCPA and eventually led us to where we are now, where student athletes can profit off of their name, image, and likeness, or as we all know it as NIL. Ramogi, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
You started this quest, this mission back in the late 90s. Tell me the story behind what caused you to begin this journey.
Sure. Actually, it started my freshman year. I was fresh out of high school, got on campus at UCLA, and within a few weeks of starting the season, one of our linebackers was suspended for groceries being left on his doorstep. Wow. They were talking about how he was talking on the radio show, talking about how tough it was to get by on a scholarship. And he said, look, I don't even have food in my refrigerator. My scholarship checks run out. And someone left groceries on his doorstep. He never even knew. The roommate took the groceries in. Somehow the NCAA found out. Wow. When they found out, they suspended him.
Wow.
And so their reasoning for suspending him was basically over name, image, and likeness. They said, we don't allow you to benefit or profit off of your name, image, and likeness. You wouldn't have received those groceries had you not been a football player at UCLA on a radio show. Therefore, You're suspended.
Wow.
And at the time, I walked into the meeting to find that out. I had walked right past our student store where they're selling his jersey in the store, right. Number 23, fully capitalizing off of his name, image, and likeness.
Right.
But when it comes down to something even as serious as food, like not being able to get by on basic necessities, the NCAA would rather see college athletes broke and hungry than breaking their rule, a rule which is in place so that they can monopolize his value commercially and all the players' value commercially. So really, that was the first taste of the injustice I felt in NCAA sports. And it was based around NIL. They didn't call it that at the time, but basically they were monopolizing all of our value, commercial value, and they didn't want us to have any, even if it meant you starving a night or 2 or 3
wow.
before your scholarship check came in. So that's what first started it.
Right. Now, this started back in mid to late 90s, you would say?
Yeah, so that incident happened in 1995. By 1997, I had started a student group on campus that eventually became the NCPA, the National College Players Association,
right.
which now is a nonprofit fighting for college athletes' rights.
Right. So we're nearly 30 years later. We just now got it approved for athletes to profit off their name, image, and likeness. My question to you is, why did it take so long? What was kind of the roadblocks and the things in your way in terms of getting this accomplished?
I think some of it was just footing. Some of it was like, how do you encourage an industry to change, or how do you make an industry change? And initially, we sought to bring out public pressure, kind of expose the problems in NCAA sports, to try to shame the NCAA and shame the colleges and conferences into doing the right thing. But this is an industry we found out has no shame. Wow. It has no shame. So trying to figure out ways to, put pressure on the system. And really, we landed on things that were outside the system. If they're not going to do something voluntarily, well, then you look at lawsuits, you look at new laws. And those were the 2 key areas that eventually led to NIL. One is I was an advisor on the first lawsuit against the NCAA over NIL. It was the O'Bannon case. Ed O'Bannon, UCLA, represented, Hall of Famer at UCLA. And he sued because he was in, like many of us, he was in the EA Sports game and wasn't getting a penny. Even long after he was done playing, they were still selling his image
wow.
in EA Sports games. So it gave an opportunity for college athletes to step up, sue the NCAA. Because it might get a little technical here, but it's really important to understand this. When it comes to college athlete compensation, whether it's NIL or even direct compensation, this is about an industry, the NCAA, that has a monopoly. that is basically price fixing compensation to players. That's illegal in America.
Wow.
You can't price fix. It's against the law. And we needed to be able to take that to court and get in front of somebody that could do something about it. So that was the initial lawsuit. And unfortunately, the remedy, the court said they agreed. This is completely illegal.
Right.
But we're going to allow them to continue doing it. That's what the court said.
Wow.
But they have to change some other things, which were good. You know, the scholarship increases. Now players get thousands of dollars more in their scholarship because of that lawsuit. But the injustice still stayed, which is why we had to find a way to get new laws passed. So that was the other mechanism, a new law. And so our organization, we were a co-sponsor of the California Name, Image, and Likeness bill that opened up everything across the nation. That was back in 2019.
Well, I actually interviewed you and talked to you. It was for a school project back in 2020. That video wasn't able to get out because of COVID, shut everything down, things like that. But when I talked to you, you were telling me about how you guys were getting ready to have another bill passed so that more student athletes can profit off their name, image, and likeness. So now fast forward 3 years later where that bill was passed, and now we see almost every day another big name athlete landing some sort of deal with a third party to profit off of their name, off of their image and likeness, and really all their hard work. How do you feel now where we are today in terms of college athletes being able to get paid the way that we're seeing them get paid?
Well, that's been a huge step of progress. It's not full economic justice, but a big part of it, third-party payment to players. Basically, it's having equal rights.
Right.
You don't have any other student on campus that can't go get an endorsement deal because of some industry says they can't. Right? This is about equal rights. Every American deserves to be able to fully capitalize off of their name, image, and likeness, whatever they bring to the table in this country. That's what America is about. And America was denied, America has denied college athletes this opportunity until the courts got involved and until legislation passed. And, since that bill passed in California, now there's been over 24 states that have laws on the books.
Right.
So this thing is done deal in terms of, not going backwards. There are some forces in Congress that want to try to reel stuff in.
Right.
That a lot of it wouldn't help players, it would actually hurt players. So we're still fighting in Congress to make sure that Congress doesn't overturn and preempt, what they call preempt the states, and overturn the freedoms that the states have granted. So it's still a battle. But now, what's real economic justice for any American? You go to work, you get paid from your employer. You get from the people that you're bringing value to, you get paid. There's laws all around that. Well, college athletes still aren't getting paid in a way that's fair from their school. They're getting a scholarship. If you look at football and Division I football and basketball players are bringing far more revenue than they're receiving value in what would be a fair market, because the NCAA is still price fixing what the schools can give players directly. It's still illegal. So we have ways right now. We're still looking at legal issues. We filed a complaint on that issue with the U.S. Department of Justice, the Antitrust Division. They're looking into it. And we also sponsored another bill that would guarantee revenue share for college athletes in California.
Wow.
And our plan is for it to blaze the same trail that NIL blazed on third-party endorsements.
That's awesome. That's awesome. When every bill is passed, you see there's a group of people that love it, and there's, of course, a group of people that don't love it, don't like it. There's a lot of questions when it comes to really giving, in some cases, teenagers a lot of money. There's people that try to take advantage of these young men and women. There's young men and women that don't know how to handle all this money yet. How would you say is the best way for these student athletes to go about approaching a third party about an NIL deal?
Well, I think, first of all, it's perspective-wise, taking a step back, because that's been a lot of the dialogue and the lens is how do we have to handle these young people? And you don't really have that anywhere else. You got child actors, you got, tennis players who are also minors, in some cases gymnasts, who are professional athletes. And there's no industry in there trying to separate them from the money or control it. So having said that, I don't think there should be any aversion to watching young people get money, but I think there should be support. I definitely think there should be support. Some of the bills that we've been advocating for, some of which have passed, include mandatory financial skills workshops for the athletes and life skills, because it's really important. That was actually something in an unrelated bill previously, years before in California, that we got passed. The NFL Players Association Executive Director, D. Smith, when he saw our bill, he said, look, whatever you can do, if you can get some financial workshops mandated by law, that would be very helpful, because by the time a lot of these athletes get to the NFL, no one can tell them anything.
Right.
And the bankruptcy rate is very high among NFL players.
Right.
So we had an eye on that from the beginning with NIL, and some of the states have that in place, and we're still advocating that if Congress does pass a bill, though, that should also be mandatory nationwide to be able to inform players. I mean, you're at an institution of higher education. There is no excuse. First of all, these schools should have already be doing this.
Right.
How do you graduate somebody out if they can't put together a budget? They got a degree from your school.
Right.
It's not a very good reflection of what you're bringing to the table as an institution. And ironically, some of the schools were using that as an excuse. They're going to waste their money. They don't know what they're doing.
Wow.
Educate them. You're at college.
Right.
You'll talk all day about how great a college you are, but educate your athletes.
Now, some of the people who think that this has a negative effect on college sports are college coaches themselves. They're saying that athletes being able to get paid by schools recruiting them is kind of messing with recruiting, and it's an unfair advantage in terms of the talent that they bring in and recruit. But the word that comes up with that is a collective, not so much name, image, and likeness, but a collective and boosters and things of that nature. Could you perhaps clear up the difference between the two in terms of a student athlete going out and getting paid by a third party and a student athlete getting recruited with, I guess, money being thrown at them as an incentive?
All right, definitely, that's a lot. So let me see how I can answer your question, and it's a great question because it's actually a question we heard from state house to state house when we were advocating for these bills.
Right.
What about these different issues? First of all, we fought very hard to make sure that boosters could engage athletes in NIL deals because we knew that they were going to be a significant source of potential money for players, income for players, because they care the most about the program.
Right.
Boosters were boosting long before NIL.
Right.
What's the purpose of a booster? To boost, to win, to have bigger recruiting budgets, to hire the best coaches, to hire the biggest facilities in order to attract recruits, to gain a better advantage in recruiting.
Right.
That money is going to be spent one way or another, but because the schools and the NCAA had a monopoly that prohibited players from receiving that money directly, the schools got to monopolize that from their fan base, from their donors. It was not an accident. And even when we were talking in the state houses, some of the ADs were like, look, this is going to take money out of our program because a booster might just they might rather just give the players some money, which is fine. That's America, right? They were trying to justify an illegal structure, by saying why they benefited from the illegal structure, monopolization of college athletes NIL. So fundamentally, that money is going to be spent no matter what. Now, the collectives, for people who haven't heard much about it, it's a bunch of boosters who got together, usually form a whole separate entity in order to make sure that there's ample money to provide NIL deals at a particular school. For us, that's great. Yeah. That's great. A lot of people organizing payments to players that, reflect their value. That's great. So I think coaches, they have to deal with whether or not, to the degree to which this is a recruiting advantage, because again, there are. Now, again, one of the things that's really important for everybody to know, there's always been recruiting advantages.
Right.
Always.
Right.
And there's been schools, you look at Ohio State and you look at Ohio University. All right. In one year, the same year Ohio State made over $200 million in athletic revenue, Ohio University only made $30 million. They're both FBS schools, supposedly competing against each other.
Right.
Do you think Ohio State has ever lost a recruit to Ohio University in football? No. It's not, there's a huge advantage there. They can have the money to hire the best coaches, what everybody deems are the best coaches, and have the biggest recruiting budgets, and they win. They're very, very successful. They're part of a conference that they have a lot of schools that do that, some of the Power Five. Every single year, they get more wins, rack up bigger TV deals, and the cycle continues because now they have even more money to dominate the recruiting. Right. So we cannot pretend, college athletes should not be denied equal rights under antitrust laws so that somebody can pretend that there's no recruiting advantages. There's been recruiting advantages, even among coaches. If you look at USC, Lincoln Riley, he got poached from Oklahoma. Right? That happens all the time. He's getting a whole lot of money. Reported $11 million a year. Okay. I mean, that is using money to gain a recruiting advantage, whether it's a collective or donors or boosters or schools, any other source of money, that's an advantage. So unless the schools are all going to revenue share, that means Ohio University will get half of what Ohio State makes. Is Ohio State really going to give up and make things even? No. They're not going to do that. And they're not going to cap coaches' salaries and make sure they can't get the best ones. They're going to use that advantage for their advantage. So we can't get it. pulled into a concept, a perspective that's false. It creates a false narrative and puts the burden on athletes' finances. You know, pointing to athletes' freedoms and equal rights as something that's wrong for those reasons. You know, that argument doesn't have any legs, and that's why when we're able to tell the legislature these things, you know, clarify these things, it was pretty successful. You know, all across the nation.
And we're at this point where all student athletes are able to get paid and able to profit off of their hard work and their performance. And that seems like mission accomplished, at least from the outside looking in. But of course, you're still working and there's still more to be done. Talk to us about what more is there to be done.
A lot more. I mean, getting into broad-based reform, it was interesting that we were able to get NIL passed before health and safety enforcement.
Wow.
Right now in college sports at all levels, there is no enforcement of safety standards at all. A coach can put a player with a concussion to the same game and he won't get punished.
Wow.
Some of these sexual assaults that have been all throughout the headlines at many schools, hundreds and hundreds of athletes at various schools, that's not even against NCAA rules to sexually assault a player.
Wow.
Or to kill a player in a hazardous workout. So you talk about the priorities of NCAA sports and follow the money. You know, don't follow what's right, follow the money. You'll see the NCAA sitting over there messing with players' monies.
Right.
So we have a bill in California that would require colleges to begin sharing revenue. These are Division I colleges, and that's the next step, revenue share, and we're fighting for fair market value for players. And if this bill is signed into law, it's going to follow the same path as NIL. Other states are going to adopt similar laws. Players everywhere will be able to get, hopefully what we see is fair market value.
Last couple of questions for you. I know you're busy, man. I can't thank you enough for taking time out to sit with me. You're a leader. You're a trailblazer in a lot of ways, whether you see it or not. And what you did in terms of getting student athletes paid took a lot of courage, took a lot of faith, and you got it done. And now, of course, as you just said, you're working towards a bigger goal and working towards more things. But somewhere out there is a young man, a young woman who sees some sort of injustice, sees some sort of unfairness in whatever aspect of life that they're in right now. But they may be too shy, too scared, you know, not have enough courage to say, I'm going to take the leap of faith. What would you say to those young men and women in terms of taking that leap of faith and not worrying about maybe the potential backlash they may get?
I would say, I'm you, I'm them. When I started this organization, it was not easy for me. I was not a person who was vocal, period. I had opinions, strong opinions, but I didn't feel like I was the person that could be out there really discussing things with athletes. And I really tried desperately to recruit my captains. I was a backup linebacker. I wasn't a team leader, but I tried to recruit my captains and team leaders, and they all loved the idea. None of them would step in that direction to do it. So
Wow.
It became a decision whether or not I was going to go ahead really on my own, because I knew that, at least for my team at that time, no one else was going to do that. And that was hard. It didn't really happen overnight. I struggled with it. You know, the idea of being in front of a camera, hated it.
Wow.
Hated it. That's not something that I'm natural, I was ever natural at. But I think what gave me more courage was learning. I read books. I read a lot of books and, learned enough to realize objectively, in my opinion, I thought objectively this is wrong, seemed to be illegal. And that kind of fueled me. And at some point as a college athlete, your time is ticking.
Right.
Whether you're speaking about college athletes' rights or you're speaking about some other social injustice, your special platform expires with your eligibility.
Right.
And the moment it expires, unfortunately for yourself in your life, you lose that platform. So for college athletes thinking about using their platform, I say think really hard about it, but get informed. You don't want to go out there and start speaking on things that you really don't have a lot of information about. Talk to experts, talk to people in the field. As college athletes, you have a lot of good access to those kinds of people too. They love to hear from students oftentimes, but especially college athletes. Somebody will return a phone call or return an email. So use that to get more information. At the same time, you might be able to get more support. One of the biggest things that we accomplished in preparation for pushing forward was we got support from the United Steelworkers Union.
Wow.
Game changer,
Wow.
because when it comes to social justice and social causes, a lot of your success will be determined by whether or not you have support from existing organizations that aren't going anywhere. Because lots of groups spring up and they fizzle out, not because the cause, the injustice is ended. It's just because it's hard it's easy to start something, hard to maintain it, very hard. So existing organizations that are well financed, that are, you know, pretty much permanent organizations, if you can find some of those people, those organizations to support you, that's key.
Awesome. Well, my friends will be upset at me if I didn't ask this question. With everything going on in terms of athletes being able to receive revenue for, you know, their name, image, and likeness, does this finally mean we will get NCAA football back in terms of being able to play it on my PlayStation, Xbox, or whatever else people are able to play it on?
Right. Absolutely. The door is open completely. EA Sports has already announced that the game is going to come back, and players will be paid.
Nice.
So that's all we wanted. We didn't want to stop the game. We wanted to make sure players weren't being used illegally. And it's taken way too long for this industry to finally succumb to this. But again, you know, it took people outside the industry, the lawmakers, the lawyers, people pushing from outside to be able to get to this point. But we're at this point. Hopefully sooner rather than later. It's looking like 2024 is going to be the year. It would have been nice 2023, but it's going to be a bit. But we're excited about that.
Nice. Yeah. Now, I have one final question for you. You've spoken so many times on behalf of college athletes and talking about what they may want or what they may need. Now it's your turn to talk on behalf of your generation and on behalf of all the old heads out there that play football. I have a picture of a younger Ramogi Huma right here.
Oh man. Yeah, freshman year.
Now you're looking a little swole there, but I gotta ask, and you're gonna speak on behalf of all the old heads, like I said, why were the shoulder pads so big back then?
Oh my gosh. Hey, for me, undersized linebacker, I needed anything. Look, if you can make my traps look like they're this big, you give me those shoulder pads. I want the biggest ones. Because underneath, I'm skin and bone. That's how I was. I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but for me, look, give me those huge shoulder pads. I loved them.
That's awesome. Well, again, Ramogi, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And now it's my turn to speak on behalf of all student athletes. Just thank you for all the hard work that you've put in over the last almost 3 decades. I mean, if it wasn't for you seeing that, you know, injustice back then when you were in college, you know, who knows if we would even be at this point today. I know I'm able to profit off my name, image, and likeness. I have 2 younger brothers who play sports. They will be able to do the same, and there's thousands and thousands of young men and women that will be able to profit the right way. And for that, I say thank you, and thank you for being with me today and answering these questions.
Hey, that means a lot. I appreciate that. And, you know, as I said, the fight still continues, and, you know, proud of you, man. Follow these dreams, man. You're special. You got a great head on your shoulders, man. Nothing but great things for you.
Well, thank you. For more information about this fight towards justice for college athletes, visit ncpanow.org. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you like, you comment, you subscribe, you share. Stay tuned. I'll have another video for you real soon.